I drove 4 hours to surprise my mom on her birthday, and she answered the door, looked at the gift bag in my hand, and said, "You didn't have to do that, just put it somewhere. We're in the middle of something." The something was my brother sitting on the couch watching football. I stood in the doorway for a second, bag still in my hand, cold air still on my back, waiting for her to step aside and let me in. She did, eventually, but she'd already walked back toward the kitchen before I even crossed the threshold. My dad didn't look up from the recliner. No hey, no happy to see you, nothing. Just the low hum of the TV and the smell of the pot roast I'd called ahead to ask if I could bring something for, and she'd said no, she had it handled. I set the gift bag on the side table near the entryway. That's where it stayed for the rest of the night. Nobody opened it. Nobody mentioned it. I ate dinner at a table where every conversation went through my brother, like he was the main channel, and I was some basic cable option nobody had bothered to subscribe to. He talked about his new truck. My dad asked follow-up questions. My mom refilled his glass without being asked. When I mentioned I'd gotten a promotion at work, my mom said, "That's nice," and then asked my brother if he wanted more potatoes. I drove home in the dark, 4 hours back, running on coffee, and a silence I couldn't explain to anyone without sounding like I was overreacting. That's the thing about this kind of family. The harm is never big enough in any single moment to point to clearly. It's always the potatoes. It's always the gift bag nobody opened. It's always the 4-hour drive and the pot roast and the "you didn't have to do that somehow still managed to make you feel like a burden for showing up at all. My name is Sloane. I'm 32 years old, and I spent the better part of a decade telling myself that my family just wasn't the demonstrative type. What I didn't know yet, sitting in the dark on that drive home, was that within 3 months, I'd find out exactly how demonstrative they could be when there was money involved. Here's the part I need to back up and explain, because the birthday dinner wasn't the beginning. It was just the night I finally stopped making excuses for what I already knew. My brother's name is Kevin. He's 35, 3 years older than me, and he has never, to my knowledge, held a job for more than 14 months. He drives a new truck. He has a nice apartment. He goes on fishing trips and has a gym membership and eats out constantly. I know this because my mom talks about all of it with the warmth she never quite managed to direct at me. Kevin's doing so well. Kevin is figuring things out. Kevin just needed a little more time. What I didn't know, and what I should have asked about years ago, is who was funding Kevin figuring things out. I found out the way you find out most things in this family, by accident, sideways, through information that wasn't meant for me. In January, my aunt called me. Not my mom's sister, my dad's sister, the one who lives in Phoenix and sends Christmas cards every year with a handwritten note inside. She's the only person on either side of my family who has ever asked me a follow-up question after I answered fine. She called because she was worried. She'd been talking to my mom, she said, and some things had come up, things about money, and she thought I should know. I sat down on my kitchen floor, back against the cabinet, and listened. For at least 2 years, maybe longer, my parents had been struggling financially. Not crisis level, my aunt thought, but stretched thin. My dad's hours had been cut. There were some medical bills from the previous fall that had taken longer than expected to clear. The mortgage was behind, nothing catastrophic, but real. Here's the part that made my stomach drop. My aunt, gentle, measured woman that she is, said, "Your mom mentioned Kevin's been a big help." "Kevin," I said. She said he's been helping them get through this. I didn't say anything for a moment. I was doing the math in my head, running through everything I knew about my brother's life and his employment history and his new truck and his fishing trips, and I kept arriving at the same number, 0. Kevin did not have money to give anyone. Did she say how? I asked. My aunt paused. She didn't go into detail. After I hung up, I sat on that kitchen floor for a while longer. Then I opened my laptop and looked at my own account history. I'm a project manager at a mid-sized logistics company. I make decent money. I live alone in a 1-bedroom apartment. I have a used car I paid off 2 years ago, and I'm careful with what I spend. I had, over the past 26 months, sent my parents a total of $9,400. Not in one lump sum, never in a way that felt significant. $200 here for a car repair. $500 there when the furnace needed a part. A mortgage payment in October when my dad's hours first got cut and my mom called me crying. Smaller things, a grocery gift card, a pharmacy copay, a birthday check for Kevin that my mom had asked me to send because he's going through a hard time. $9,400. I counted it 3 times. And Kevin, apparently, was the one who'd been helping them. I want to be clear about what happened next because it's easy to assume I immediately confronted someone or made some dramatic move. I didn't. I went to bed. I went to work the next day. I bought coffee and sat in a meeting about supply chain optimization and tried to feel like a normal person who hadn't just discovered that her family had been quietly rewriting her contributions out of the story for the better part of 2 years. I didn't say anything for 2 weeks. I just watched, paid attention in a way I hadn't let myself before. Noticed the way my mom's texts to me were functional. Can you look into this? Have you seen that? Just checking. Noticed the way her texts to Kevin, which she sometimes accidentally included me on before catching herself, were warm. Hey bug, how's your week? Thinking of you. Made your favorite Sunday. Wish you were here. She had never once texted me to say she wished I were there. Even when I was there, she mostly wished I'd brought something. After those 2 weeks, I sent my mom a text, a simple one. Just checking in, hope you're both doing okay, anything you need help with. She responded within 4 minutes. Actually, yes. The property tax is due next month. It's $800. We're a little short this cycle. I know it's a lot to ask. She'd asked me this before. I'd paid it before. Last year, same month. I hadn't expected a thank you, but I had at least expected it to register in some way, in the history of our relationship, in the way she spoke to me, in something. It hadn't. I didn't respond right away. I took 24 hours and then wrote back, I'm sorry, I'm stretched a little thin right now. I can't do $800. Is there another option? The response came back in under 2 minutes. That's fine. Kevin will figure something out. Those 4 words. Kevin will figure something out. I read them probably 15 times. Kevin, who had no savings and no income stability and a brand new truck with payments, would figure something out. But I, who had been quietly sending money for 2 years, was stretched thin, and that was apparently the end of it. No pushback, no further ask, no understanding even. Just an immediate redirect to Kevin like I declined and exited the situation. I thought about the birthday dinner, the gift bag by the door, the potatoes. I thought about $9,400. I called my cousin that night. She's a couple years older than me, lives in another state, and has been largely distant from my parents' side of the family since a falling out about 5 years ago that she'd never fully explained to me. We weren't close exactly, but we talked a few times a year, and she was always honest with me in a way almost nobody else in my family ever managed to be. Can I ask you something kind of personal? I said. Yeah, she said. Did my parents ever ask you for money? A pause. Once, she said. A long time ago. Did you give it to them? No, she said, and that was more or less the end of us being close. I let that sit for a second. Did they tell the rest of the family something about why you stopped coming around? Another pause, longer this time. Your mom told everyone I was going through some personal stuff and had become difficult to be around. I thanked her and we talked for a while longer. After I hung up, I sat with the pattern of it. My cousin had said no and been reframed as the problem. I'd been saying yes for years, quietly, without ever being acknowledged, and I'd still somehow been the one who arrived at the birthday dinner to be told just put it somewhere. It clicked into place the way things do when you've been refusing to look directly at them for a long time. This wasn't neglect, exactly. It wasn't random emotional coldness. It was a system. I was a resource, and the system was working exactly as designed. The next morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to say anything. I wasn't going to confront anyone, not yet. I was going to get clear on the facts first, lay them out somewhere I could see them plainly, before I did anything at all. I made a spreadsheet. Every transfer I could document, every Venmo, every check, every gift card. I pulled up 2 years of bank statements and went through them line by line. When I was done, the number had actually grown. I'd missed a few smaller ones, $10,250, not counting the years before that, which I hadn't tracked. I printed it out and put it in a folder. Then I made a second document, a timeline of every time my mom had mentioned Kevin helping out in conversation. There weren't many specifics. She was vague in a way I now understood wasn't accidental. I noted that too. Then I waited. I didn't know exactly what I was waiting for. Something to tip. It tipped about 3 weeks later. My brother called me on a Thursday evening. He didn't call often, usually just on holidays or when he needed something, so I answered with more patience than I felt. Hey, he said, Mom mentioned you couldn't help with the property tax. That's right, I said, yeah. It's kind of a big deal for them. I'm going to try to cover it, but I'm a little short right now myself, with the truck and everything. The truck. Kevin had bought his truck the previous spring. I remembered because my mom had mentioned it excitedly, and I'd done the math on what those payments probably looked like, and I'd said nothing. I understand, I said, very carefully. Mom was hoping maybe you could reconsider? Just this once, just this once. I'd heard that phrase so many times. Every single request came with it. Just this once. Just until they got back on their feet, just until things settled down. Things had not settled down. They had not gotten back on their feet. This was not just this once. I'm not able to do it this time, I said. He was quiet for a moment. Then she's going to be really stressed about this, Sloane. I know, I said. I hope it works out. After I hung up, I made a note in my folder. Then I went to bed and for the first time in maybe 2 years, didn't lie awake doing calculations in my head about what I could afford to send and when. What happened next, I was not entirely prepared for. My mom called me 4 days later on a Sunday morning. I answered, as I always did. She didn't say hello. She said, I need to understand what's going on with you. I'm fine, Mom. You're not fine. You're being cold and distant, and I don't know what we did to deserve this. I counted to 3 in my head. I'm not being cold. I'm just not in a position to help financially right now. After everything your father and I have done for you. She said it quietly, which was somehow worse than if she'd said it loudly. Mom, I raised you. I did everything for you kids. And now when we actually need something, you decide you can't help. She paused. Kevin never gives me this kind of trouble. I thought about the spreadsheet. I thought about $10,250. I thought about the birthday dinner and the gift bag and the potatoes. Has Kevin given you any money? I asked. Specifically, has he transferred you anything, paid any bills? A beat of silence. That's not your business. I'm curious because I've been paying bills for you for 2 years and nobody has ever once. I'm not doing this, she said. I'm not going to sit here and be interrogated about what your brother does or doesn't do. We don't keep score in this family. We don't keep score. As if I'd been sitting here with a chalkboard, as if I'd made the spreadsheet for fun. I'm not keeping score, I said. I just think it would be helpful to have an honest conversation about. You sound like you're reading from something, she said. I wasn't. But I also was, in the sense that I'd spent the last several weeks thinking through exactly this moment. Knowing it would come, knowing she would find a way to make me feel like the problem before the conversation ended. And she had managed it in under 3 minutes. I said I had to go. She hung up before I did. The next day I texted my aunt, the one in Phoenix. I kept it brief. I told her I was having a hard time with my parents and I wanted to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding something. Could she tell me more about what my mom had said, about Kevin helping? She called me instead of texting back, which told me something. Honey, she said after a long pause, I don't think Kevin has given them a single dollar. We stayed on the phone for a while. She told me that my mom had been telling people for years, extended family, old family friends, people my aunt saw at holidays, that Kevin was the one holding things together. That Kevin was so responsible, so present, always there when they needed him. She had never, not once, mentioned me. She mentioned you used to live far away, my aunt said carefully. She made it sound like you were kind of unreachable. Hard to connect with. I had lived 40 minutes away until 2 years ago when I moved for my job. Even now I was 4 hours, not far. I called every Sunday. I'd taken my mom to a doctor's appointment last spring and sat in the waiting room for 2 hours reading a magazine. Because she'd forgotten to mention I could leave and come back. Thank you for telling me, I said. Are you okay? Yeah, I said. I think I'm just seeing something clearly for the first time. I texted my brother that night. I kept it simple. I said I wanted to talk, not about money, just to catch up. Could we get on a call this week? He said sure. Thursday worked. Thursday came. He answered on the second ring, which surprised me. He sounded slightly wary, which surprised me less. I didn't open with an accusation. I'd thought about it and decided that wasn't what I wanted. What I wanted was information. I asked him directly, has Mom ever talked to you about the money I've been sending them? He was quiet long enough that I knew the answer. Not really, he said. I mean, she mentioned you helped with some stuff once or twice. Once or twice, I said. Yeah, I have bank statements showing $10,000 over 2 years, I said. Transfers, checks, bill payments. I'm not saying this to make you feel bad. I just want to know what picture they've been painting. He went very quiet. She told me you weren't really in the mix, he said finally. She said you were busy with your career and you'd sort of checked out and that you and Dad weren't that close anymore. He paused. She's been asking me for money too, Sloane. I've given them maybe $600-700 over the last year. That's why she thinks I'm helping. $600 and I'm the one holding the family together. I absorbed that. $600 to my $10,000. And Kevin got the credit, the warmth, the texts that said, hey bug, the refilled glass at dinner. I got the gift bag sitting unopened by the door. They told me you didn't come around much because you were hard to be close to, he said, quietly. I'm realizing I just believed them. Most people do, I said. We talked for almost 2 hours. Kevin asked questions I didn't expect him to ask. What had I been paying for? What exactly had she said to me over the years? What had I noticed? He wasn't defensive. He sounded honestly a little shaken. Like a person who'd just looked at a painting he'd always assumed was one thing and realized it was something else entirely. Before we hung up, he said, what are you going to do? I don't know yet, I said. And that was true. I knew what I wasn't going to do. I wasn't going to send more money. I wasn't going to answer the next request with a careful explanation of my budget. I wasn't going to call my mom on Sunday morning and let her make me feel like I was failing her by not bleeding quietly and reliably on schedule. I opened my email that night and drafted a message to my parents. Not a letter. Not an ultimatum, just the facts laid out plainly, the dates, the amounts, the transfers, a link to a shared document with the supporting records. Because I wasn't going to make anything easy to dismiss, I said I want to be clear about what the last 2 years have looked like from my side. I've attached the records. I'm not angry. I'm just done pretending we're on the same page. I hit send at 11:47 p.m. and set my phone face down on the nightstand. By 7 the next morning, I had 12 messages. 9 were from my mom. They went through several phases. First, where did you get those numbers? Those aren't right. Then, I can't believe you're doing this to us. This is humiliating. Then a long one that I could only skim at first because my hands were doing something strange and shaky. A message where she said I had always been difficult to love, that I had made everything hard since I was small, that Kevin was grateful and easy, and I had never once made them feel like they were enough. Difficult to love. I read it 3 times, not because it devastated me, though it did, a little, the way anything still hurts when you hear it out loud even after you've already suspected it for years. I read it 3 times because I wanted to be completely sure I was seeing it plainly, without softening it. She meant it. That was the most important thing to understand. She meant every word. My dad's message was short. Just call me. We need to discuss this privately. I did not call him. Then there were 3 messages from an unknown number that turned out to be a second cousin I hadn't talked to in years, who had apparently been looped into some version of this situation by my mom, and wanted me to know that family doesn't air its business like this, and that I should be ashamed. I sat with all of it for a while. Then I opened my folder, pulled out the spreadsheet, and added a new column. Documentation of the narrative. What they told Kevin, what they told my aunt, what they'd apparently told the extended family. I wasn't building a case, I just needed to look at the whole shape of it. The shape of it was not subtle. Kevin called me at noon. He'd seen the emails. Apparently my mom had forwarded my message to him with a note that said, "Can you please talk to your sister?" He did not, however, seem to want to talk me out of anything. "She called me this morning," he said. She was crying. "She said you were attacking them. Did you read my email?" "Yeah. Did it seem like an attack to you?" He paused. "No," he said. "It seemed like a spreadsheet. It was the most my brother had ever made me laugh." He was quiet for a moment. "She also told me she's thinking about asking Dad to look into whether you did something legally wrong by sending money and then, I don't know, demanding acknowledgement or something." "That's not a legal concept," I said. "I know. I sent money freely. There was no loan agreement." "There's nothing to claim." "I know," he said again. He sounded tired. "I think she's just trying to scare you." "I know," I said. After that call, I did some things I'd been considering for several days. I forwarded my original email, the one with the records, to my aunt in Phoenix, not to cause drama, not to recruit an ally. Just because she had called me to warn me months ago, had told me the truth when she didn't have to, and I figured she deserved to see the full picture. She responded within the hour, just 4 sentences. "I'm not surprised. I'm sorry this has been your experience. You handled this with more grace than most people could. I'm here if you need to talk." I stared at those 4 sentences for a long time. The following week was strange. My parents didn't call, no texts, no emails. The silence was total and absolute, and I kept waiting for it to feel like punishment the way it probably would have a year ago. It didn't. It felt like what it was. Relief, room to breathe, nothing demanding access to me that I hadn't offered. My mom broke the silence on a Wednesday evening 3 weeks later. She left a voicemail. She said she'd been thinking about everything and she wanted to talk. She said she was sorry if I felt like my contributions hadn't been appreciated. She said she hoped we could move past this. Sorry if I felt. Not sorry that they hadn't mentioned it to anyone. Not sorry that they'd spent 2 years constructing a version of the family where Kevin was the hero and I was the absent one. Sorry if I felt. I did not call her back. I did call Kevin later that week. I needed to know one thing. "Did they ever pay back anything you gave them?" I asked. "No," he said. "Did they say they would?" "Mom said she'd make it up to me." "She told me that too," I said, "for 2 years. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "I'm done giving them money." "Yeah," I said. I stayed on the phone a while, not talking about our parents, just talking. About his job and my job and the town we'd grown up in and what we both remembered about it, which turned out to be surprisingly different versions of the same childhood. He remembered it as warm and chaotic. I remembered it as quietly lonely. "She really never mentioned the money?" I asked him once. $10,000, and she never said anything? "She mentioned you'd helped a couple of times," he said. "Small stuff. She made it sound like, I don't know, like $20 here and there, $20 here and there." I thought about the mortgage payment, the property tax, the furnace part, the pharmacy copay, the birthday check I'd sent Kevin himself at my mom's request that had apparently not made it into the ledger of things I'd done. Okay, I said. I'm sorry, Sloane. You didn't do anything. I know. I'm still sorry. That mattered more than I expected it to. The month after, I made two decisions. The first was that I was not going to respond to my mother's voicemail. Not out of cruelty, not to punish anyone, but because I'd run the scenario forward in my head and there was no version of that conversation that ended with me feeling understood. She would soften. She would say the right general words. She would stop short of specifics, because specifics would require her to account for $10,000 and 2 years of a narrative where I didn't exist. We would hang up, and the next time something came up, the cycle would start again. I could see it clearly. I didn't want it. The second decision, I made an appointment with a therapist, not because I was falling apart. Actually, the opposite. I was feeling eerily functional, and I wanted to understand why. I'd expected cutting off contact with my parents to feel like loss. Mostly it felt like putting down something heavy that I'd been told was actually very light. She asked me in our second session what I'd been most afraid of going into all of this. I thought about it for a while. That I was wrong, I said finally. That I'd misread everything, that I was the one being unfair, that I was the difficult one they said I was. And now? She asked. Now I have a spreadsheet, I said. She smiled. What does the spreadsheet tell you? That I knew what I was doing, I said. I just didn't know they knew too. Months passed. I found a rhythm. Sunday morning stopped being something I had to manage, no calls to brace for, no requests disguised as checking in. My apartment got quieter in a good way. My cousin sent me a message one afternoon, casual, just to say hi. We ended up texting for an hour. She mentioned that her own experience, years ago, had made her feel crazy for a long time, like she'd overreacted to something she couldn't prove. I told her about the spreadsheet. She asked me to send her a blank version so she could make her own. I did. My brother invited me to his place for Thanksgiving. First time we'd made any kind of plan like that. His girlfriend was great. She made a sweet potato thing with marshmallows that was genuinely terrible, and I ate 2 helpings and told her it was incredible. Kevin knew I was lying and said nothing. It was the best holiday I'd had in years. I didn't get a message from my parents that day. No call, no text. I'd half expected something, a holiday attempt at contact. A guilt nudge. There was nothing. Sometime after dinner, sitting on Kevin's couch with a glass of wine, watching his girlfriend try to teach his dog a trick that the dog clearly had no interest in learning, I thought about the birthday dinner, the gift bag by the door, the potatoes, the 4-hour drive home in the dark. I thought about all the energy I'd spent, for years, trying to be useful enough to be loved, trying to give in ways that could not be ignored, trying to make myself count in a math where someone else had already decided what the numbers meant. The dog finally did the trick. His girlfriend shrieked. Kevin laughed. I laughed. The dog looked briefly pleased and then went back to being uninterested in everything. I thought I did not get the family I should have had, but I'm building one I can actually live inside. That felt like enough. More than enough, honestly. It felt like the first true thing I'd known in a long time.